morning. Good morning. Hello, good morning. I'm Angie Moss, publisher and CEO of the San Antonio Report, and would like to welcome you all to our last community civic engagement event of the year. We're so excited to be here with these panelists to talk about the growth in biosciences in San Antonio. In addition to our small group gathered here today, we also have a number of people who are tuning in, and we're especially excited to have students from SAISD's Cass Med High School joining us today. They're going to be listening to the discussion and then having conversations with their professors afterwards about biosciences in San Antonio. And that's the kind of impact that we love to have at the San Antonio Report. We had so many amazing community events this year. We started out with a sit down with new Bexar County Judge Peter Sakai. We delved into youth mental health, water conservation, and so many more. And we are in the process of planning our civic engagement for 2024. So be on the lookout for more newsworthy discussions. I'm going to hand it over to, just first want to say we are partnering this event today with LaunchSA, which is powered by Geekdom, and we're so grateful for the opportunity to be in this LaunchSA space and for our long-term partnership with Geekdom. We really appreciate all that they do. So Lee Munsell, Editor-in-Chief, take it away.
Thank you so much, Angie, and thank you to our panelists for being here. Thank you for being here for this conversation about San Antonio's growing bioscience industry. Experts say the growing bioscience sector of San Antonio's economy is poised to explode in upcoming years, and with an $8 billion economic impact in 2021, which I believe is the last time we measured it in that exact way, it already has a significant role in our local economy. Today we are joined by three of the industry's top leaders to help us understand the growing world of high-paying biosciences, biotech, and research jobs in San Antonio, and how the city is positioning itself as a national leader in biomedical research. Please join me in welcoming Heather Hansen, the president of BiomedSA. We are also joined by Randy Herrick, the outgoing CEO of the Texas Research and Technology Foundation, and Dr. Larry Schlesinger, the president and CEO of Texas Biomed. Thank you all for being here today. Now, as each of you knows, there's so much happening in the biosciences, biotechnology, and biomedical research areas that sometimes it's hard to keep up. So let's start by getting the lay of the land. Can you introduce yourselves by telling us a bit about the most exciting developments in each of your organizations? When it comes to the opportunities being created in the biosciences in San Antonio, what are you excited about right now? Start off.
Well, as she mentioned, I run BiomedSA, which is the nonprofit dedicated to the growth in this healthcare and bioscience ecosystem. And what I find really exciting that's going on right now is there's growth just about across every subsector of this industry. San Antonio's foundation for this industry is its accessible research. And the large research institutions across the city are all growing rapidly. The hospitals are building new hospital centers all over town. There's just a lot of excitement all the way down to the startup level, where startups are starting their new adventures, and the San Antonio's got such a nice collaborative environment for not only the startups to leverage those research organizations, but also amongst the big organizations to work together to do great things. So BiomedSA is really happy to be a part of that and help facilitate a lot of that growth.
Well, Randy handed me the microphone, so I'll go next. First of all, love this place. I've not been to the library before. It's really exceptional to be here, and I also love that this is civic outreach, because one of the aspects of biomedical research and biosciences is to get the word out, to be able to communicate effectively, and this is an event where we can do that, so I'm excited about that. Texas Biomedical Research Institute is 82 years old. It was the Southwest Foundation for Applied Science when it started, and I still hear people in the city talk about the Southwest Foundation. Our new name started in 2011, is the fourth name of the institute. So we're a bit west of here on a 200-acre campus. We're a 501c3 nonprofit. And we're a biomedical research institute focused on protecting you, your families, and the global community from the threat of infectious diseases. So we're an infectious disease research institute, and we particularly focus on the most vulnerable populations to infection. COVID-19 has taught us that. So we have large programs in aging, in metabolic disturbances like diabetes and obesity, because we know these individuals are susceptible to infection. So we study not only the bugs, if you will, in infectious disease, but really us and how we acquire infection, how we get over infection. What I'm excited about at Texas Biomed is our growth. It's really important for the community to know that on our 200-acre campus are assets that exist nowhere else in North America combined. And that's not hyperbole. We have a range of high containment facilities to allow us to study infectious diseases safely. We have one of 7 national primate centers, which is a precious resource for our campus in bringing anything. And we have this deep history of entrepreneurialism. We like to say we're a nonprofit with a for-profit mentality. 2 things I'll mention at the outset that excite me. One is that we're in the middle of a 10-year strategic plan. And one of the important parts about running a nonprofit research institute is financial stability so that we can keep growing and doing great things. And so we made a decision to diversify our portfolio of funding. And in doing so, we're able to marry the basic sciences, which is the foundation of any innovation that ends up in the market, right? These are scientists, outstanding scientists working in laboratories, working on the computer, marrying that with our business unit, Applied Science and Innovation, which is really a contract organization. And the combined assets that come in through this structure, which also as a physician scientist, let me think about this concept of bench to bedside, bringing ideas to the market allows us to actualize that. I'm very excited. It's really helped us grow. I came here in 2017. We're 3.5 times annual revenue now as a result of the way we've restructured ourselves. And the second thing I'm happy about, and I'll end there on this opening, is that 82 years old brings you rich tradition. But what does it also bring? Soberly, it brings you old buildings. So that sometimes are not maintained adequately. So we're as part of our strategic plan, in a major modernization of the campus right now, and we have robust plans for the next 5 years. I'm very excited about how we're going to reposition our campus and be able to execute on our vision. And so it's incredibly fun and powerful. And I think for the city, it's really a source of pride, I would say. Thank you.
Thank you, Larry. And I want to toot his horn a little bit further. He said we transitioned from where we were to focus on infectious disease, and he's now one of the, if not the top center for infectious disease studies in the country. So congratulations on that. We have a lot of similarities. We're the baby in the room because we're 40 years old as a foundation, Texas Research and Technology Foundation. And then a lot of you really recognize us as Velocity Texas. It's a subsidiary, but it's been our focus it's been our face for the last 4.5, 5 years as we've developed out the incubator, accelerator, and then built a campus downtown to house stem cell manufacturing. We have one not-for-profit stem cell manufacturing and a for-profit on campus. So it's interesting to watch them and how they run their routine. I too believe that nonprofit means I only have one shareholder, and that's the public. But I still have a shareholder, and I need to be true to that shareholder and run it as a profit. So Renee and I are always looking at how we fund long-term the operations of the foundation. And we're very proud of the fact of the number of companies that we've incubated through, or that we've influenced, or that we've assisted with other agencies moving to San Antonio. So, and I too believe it's a very robust. We just left Heather's breakfast this morning, which she may talk about, but there was some pretty good, Dr. Potter brought some pretty good demographic statistics of where San Antonio is going. And biomed is a big part of that. It's one of the major drivers in it. And then finally, since most of these innovation districts, like we're building on the east side, have a university base to them, and that's their real force behind them. We didn't do that. We chose to be independent because we have so many institutions in town. And so we chose military medicine to be that real anchor force. And so we've been working for a number of years to bring military research, two things, bring more research to San Antonio within the DoD, but also bring some of the research that's ongoing on the post and on the bases out to the private sector where it's more easy to collaborate. And I'm proud to say we brought 20 researchers out from the ISR, the Army, a year ago, 1st of December, and it's thriving, and we've had creators formed, we've had partnerships formed with private sector companies, and they love working in the atmosphere. So we hope to do more of that as we go forward.
Wonderful, thank you. A big part of what we're trying to accomplish today is to help explain a complicated industry in a way that makes sense to our community. Since this growth, cutting edge research and developments are all happening here in Bexar County. So what should San Antonians know about the growth of these industries in our city, and why should San Antonians care?
I think the primary reason you should care is that the healthcare and bioscience sector is the largest economic driver in San Antonio. Nearly 1 out of every 5 employees are working in this sector. So this is the backbone of the economy that we have going in San Antonio. So that's why it's important. Some key unique assets we have here: the largest military health complex in the country. That's here in San Antonio. That's clinical care, it's research, and it is education as well. We have top research organizations, as I mentioned, and obviously we have Texas Biomed here. We have Southwest Research Institute, which is another nonprofit research organization, unique as well, and they cover the biomedical space. We have 2 medical schools. We have a number of other universities that are working in the science and engineering space supporting this industry. We have manufacturing. We have contract manufacturing. So all of that added up, plus the great clinical care that a lot of it is cutting edge, and there's more being created in San Antonio. This is San Antonio. San Antonio is a city of science and health, and that's why it's so relevant to everybody in their everyday lives, in addition to their own personal medical care that everyone will need at some point.
So I like in this setting to define some terms. You mentioned it's complex and we get confused about these terms, but when I have the opportunity, I like to define for a broad audience. So the term bioscience, if you look it up, is really research on life sciences, all aspects of life sciences, whether you're in the ocean, in the environment, industrial, as well as biomedical. And then there's biomedical research, which is really research focused on disease and health. So it ultimately is defining new diagnostic tools, therapies, and vaccines, pharmacology, nutrition, aging, biomedical research. We have extraordinary enterprises throughout the city. And then there's biotech, and you just heard Randy talk about velocity. And this is really taking the science and applying it, so that now we can make it practical for the world. We have Xenix in the audience here, brought an incredible machine to the market to help us keep our environments clean. So it's a continuum, and we need to think of ourselves as a continuum. So we all complement each other in very powerful ways. You need the research engine to create innovation. That innovation drives application. You need to then have enterprises that can take that science and move it to a way that we can help humans stay healthy by bringing those solutions to the clinic. And so I think, as I think about the future, I have a lot of thoughts on this topic. This is a way that we keep San Antonians healthy. We need to keep connecting what we do in these enterprises with you. That is the output of what we do, and that connectivity then becomes real. The demographics are astounding that we just heard about. The growth in this region between Fort Worth, Dallas, College Station, San Antonio, Austin, top 3 in the country. And what's interesting is 50% of that growth are migrants. I love that term. Migrants coming from other parts of the country. And you all know probably number 1 is California. But in looking at who's coming in and mixing with who's here, we're really beginning to elevate something that we may talk about more later. That is the type of economy that we need for the future, which is a knowledge-based economy, in my opinion, which really brings human innovation and human capital forward, which helps dynamically change our workforce and allows us to become even stronger. And the importance about focusing on the sector we're talking about today is it has a direct connection to education and elevating education, our school systems, educating the training and expertise of our workforce. So this is really an opportunity for San Antonio, and I'll stop there, but there's more to say about that.
I don't know where to start. I mean, we're on an upward trend in San Antonio, as they pointed out this morning, a pretty drastic upward trend. So the challenge has really become, you got a lot of people moving in, but they're moving in because we're Texas. And we have a low cost of living, we have no state income tax, we have apparently abundant water and power. But those challenges are going to be in front of us as we move forward. One, politically, we don't want them to bring their politics to Texas because that could ruin the thing that we have going for us as a state. And as much as we're working on devices and vaccines and different opportunities there, we as a community need to be working diligently to figure out water, electricity, and infrastructure in general. I don't know how many times I-35 came up in the session this morning. So a lot of challenges in front of us, but I think because we are identifying them early and we're very focused on understanding this growth, I think as a community we'll overcome some of these challenges, or we'll attack them head on. So I'm excited about where we're going on all fronts. I'm super happy to be in San Antonio and be able to have this conversation here.
Let's talk a little bit about jobs, because as we talk about why San Antonio should care about this growth, I think a big part of it is what that means for our economy and what it means for our jobs. The healthcare and bioscience industry has added more than 24,000 new net jobs over the past decade locally, the chamber estimated. Obviously, healthcare and biosciences is the big bucket of hospitals, that sort of patient care, as well as what's going on in biosciences. But help put that in perspective for us. Who are these workers that are moving here? Are they moving here for these roles? And how does that job growth affect our local economy?
I guess I'll keep going first.
Yeah, we're going.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so over the last 10 years in the combined healthcare and bioscience sector, there's been an additional 50,000 jobs. And when these jobs are getting filled, they are higher paying jobs. So that is more money to be spent in our economy. The other thing that's really exciting about this industry is that there are available jobs for people right out of high school. So you don't have to have a PhD or an MD to work in this industry. You don't have to be an engineer. You could be somebody with a high school diploma. You could be somebody who took a 6-week training course. You could be somebody with an associate's degree. There are jobs available for everyone. So as this industry in particular grows, it's job growth for everyone in San Antonio. So recently, biomedical led an effort to put together some career marketing material about these jobs and the career pathways, because something that we found in talking to some of the physician smaller size clinics is that a lower level staff didn't realize about career path. Because if you only know your family and your neighbors have jobs where you work the same job your entire life and that's it, you don't realize perhaps that you could do additional training, or you could take your career in a different angle to continue upward mobility. And that is what is also exciting about this industry, is there's opportunity for people, regardless of what educational level they start at, to move up a career ladder and move forward. to me, that's what's so exciting about this particular industry growing, is that opportunity exists.
So I'm going to tag on that because we looked around. We intentionally moved our campus to an area of town that had been underserviced and underserved for as long as I've been in San Antonio. And when we did that, we looked around to see, unemployment levels were at 30% on the east side. There was, I think the term I was given was 60% at risk for kids graduating high school. And so, and then we had been visiting with the military, and we knew with the expansion of their research capabilities, they were going to bring in a couple thousand more people they were going to bring in 100 MD PhDs over the next 3 years, but they needed 600 to 700 lab techs and admin. Same thing you're talking about, Heather, is that, these jobs that you can train people pretty quickly to work these jobs, and they're good pay. So we elected to go into the middle school. We took it a little earlier and said, we're going to go in and we're going to talk to kids about taking math, biology, chemistry, and that we'll have a job for you in your neighborhood out of high school to really start to get them thinking. And now it has grown into a program with communities and schools. We're at 63 middle schools this year, everyone in SAISD, and we will touch over 9,000 kids, both with collateral materials, with mentors coming in that look like them, that maybe grew up on the east side and have been professionals. And we get their attention there, and then we bring them to the Velocity campus for a full day, twice a semester, where we bring scientists in that get to put on a lab coat and go through the stem cell manufacturing facility. And it's all about ideation. Somebody sparked every one of us in this room at some point along the career path that we're on. And so our goal is to keep going with these kids through high school and with some of the programs that you're doing and others, but also be able to keep backfilling so that we can get these kids on a pathway to, the overall goal is generational wealth. And so we're on a multi-generational task with these kids. But I am confident we are going to do great things in healthcare and the healthcare delivery system, and I think we're going to do great things for personal wealth through that program.
My themes of this topic beautifully amplify what Randy just said, Heather said as well, and so I'll just hammer home some of these points. First of all, biomed is a major growth spurt. I came here in 17 with 340 employees. We're currently at 450, and we're up to 10 new employees a month. 70% of our institute are new. We've been doing a lot of recruiting from outside the state as well as inside the state, and something with job growth that we all need to acknowledge is that's a family. And that family, it's about the significant other and what job do they have, and then it's about the children. So the ecosystem is everybody and does include, in a very important way, our academic enterprises, because those are the schools that when we bring in, the families are very interested in, and we need to provide that. And we need to continue to bolster the opportunities for those families when they come, and that's the first point I want to make. Randy touched on the fact that this particular sector is relatively higher paying jobs. And so with training comes a really good job opportunity, and that elevates the city as well. And finally, what I would say on the education front, it's very similar to what Randy was describing, Texas Biomed. Well, my vision as a physician scientist is that you build a great scientific enterprise as a playground for young people to come and learn. And that is critical for any type of research environment. And we have, under the auspices of our Executive Vice President for Research, two really top-notch employees that are focused on STEM, elementary STEM, and then the pipeline from graduates to undergraduates, graduates, postdocs. We're in every Title I school in the city. We are funded by the National Institutes of Health to train science teachers in San Antonio to teach the students STEM. And then the students come in, just like Randy's program, and they can come to Biomed and they can do things with us, and we can do hands-on learning. the educational piece becomes critical. I think growing from within San Antonio, which is an emphasis area for our city, for our mayor, and the programs we have is critical. I believe we can do even more by recruiting from outside and bringing in, because it brings new ideas, it brings additional talent, it brings something called critical mass, which is, I think, as growth. Our competition, by the way, is not Boston per se. It's really, when we think about it, it's Boston, it's Southern California, Palo Alto, and we keep our eye on that ball, and we look for ways to jump over them, frankly. And that's where I think the secret sauce is our culture, because our culture is unique, and I think that we need to capitalize on that culture. To that point, recently there was a summit, and Heather, you'll want to talk more about it, but what I've been talking about recently is the fact that social sciences will tell you that as we grow, we actually may become more siloed. If you look at more advanced cities in this country, in terms of depth, all of a sudden I'm better than you are, and it becomes a little too competitive. I think if we work together to avoid that from happening and bank on our connectivity, our culture, I think we can actually do great things going forward. And I think the country's starting to pay attention. They really are. We're not a hidden secret anymore, I don't think.
And I'll go back to you on this one, Larry, because I think I'd like you to extrapolate a little bit on what you said. And you already touched on this, but the biosciences industry is growing nationally with incredible competition for biotechnology jobs with places like Boston, California cities, as you mentioned, Chicago, Seattle, Washington, D.C., New York regions. Each of you, I think, does recruiting at different points. So what case are you making to help San Antonio stand out?
First of all, I don't know if I can answer because I'm so used to Heather going first. It makes it difficult. We have a lot to offer when we bring people to this city. This is an incredibly nice city to live in. People are very friendly. We have a lot to do in this city. If you look at because of the focus on tourism, it's also brought in a lot of other advantages that people who live in the city can have. It has wonderful communities of all different levels. And I think that it's affordable for people that you're recruiting from the coast who are usually used to much more expensive environments to live. We used to say, if you move from California, it'll be really tough because if you own a home in California and you sell it, you'll have to buy 2 homes in San Antonio. I don't know that that's the case anymore. That's what we used to say. But I think the proposition is something already mentioned, which is we have institutions working together. And so people who come in can really see an environment that's bigger than just where they work. And they also can see a place where their children can grow up. And again, I want to come back to families because this is so big when you're recruiting. So, I think we can sell that. We can also look at our growth numbers in the sector, as has already been pointed out. And it becomes a new frontier, if you will, for healthcare and biosciences. And I think people are starting to leave Silicon Valley, and Boston's getting a little tough. And if you don't like winter, San Antonio is not a bad place to live.
I'm going to piggyback on that because we got a call from Greater SATX probably 3 months ago. It said these 2 guys from a spinoff of one of the big tech companies were coming to San Antonio and we were on their list to come visit with. And so I found out who it was, and I called one of my favorite geek friends and said, do you know about these people? Do you know about this company? And he says, yeah, we're an investor with them. So I said, let's have lunch. So I came into the meeting with them with a little bit of information. I wasn't coming as a complete novice, but I knew some questions to ask. And one of them was the very first one was, why are you looking at San Antonio? And they're currently in Cambridge, Paris, London, San Francisco, and there were a couple others, but they said they wanted to look at Middle America. And so they came to South by Southwest in Austin, and as a result of that, wanted to look at San Antonio. The 2 biggest questions on their list were quality of life and cost of living. And it was exactly what you're saying. they're tired of the high cost of where they are now. The other thing they said was, we have a hard time keeping people because it's so easy for them to switch companies. Because there's so many people in that region, they get mad one day, they can just go to another company. He says, I'm looking for something that I can provide a little more stick, because I can bring, and he never asked me a question about high-end workforce. He just was asking really about quality of life, cost of living, wanted to understand a little bit more about our workforce, base workforce. But he said, I can bring them here, and I think I'll keep them here, and they'll be happier, and I'll get better results. So I thought that was pretty interesting.
Well, BioMediC's role in this ecosystem, one of the things we do is we help recruit companies to San Antonio in the bioscience and healthcare space. And we have a list of things, a lot of the quality of life and cost issues, business friendly, because San Antonio as the government, the local governments as well as the state really are business supportive for the most part. So I have this whole list, and what I thought was really interesting, and I had to change the order of my list because people were, they seemed to know the quality of life and cost issues before they talked to me. They were zooming in on the average commute time. So for San Antonio, it is 24 minutes. And so I moved that to the top of the list because it's something people don't know, and we're shocked because a lot of them have an hour and a half commute times, 2-hour commute times, and we don't have that here. So that is a wonderful thing about San Antonio and how we are spread out. But my background in industry is I was recruiting individuals to come here. Within the first 6 months, I generally heard, this is an amazing collaborative environment. You do not see this environment in other cities that are more competitive or just their culture is different. You know, people come to San Antonio and they're welcomed. You don't have to have 5 generations going back in order to be part of the San Antonio community. But beyond that, people are willing to help each other. So it is common for large organizations to support each other, startups to support each other. When I talk with a company, they're saying, hey, we really need this, whatever. We can generally find it here. And if it's appropriate for a contract relationship, you know, that can happen. But a lot of times it's, hey, we need to borrow something, and we just borrow it. That is not uncommon here in San Antonio. It's so much a part of the fabric that there's even a grant opportunity for collaborative research in the biomedical area that the San Antonio Medical Foundation put together. There are research collaboratives that Texas Biomed is a part of, along with UT Health San Antonio, Southwest Research Institute, and UTSA, where they are pooling their resources together so their researchers can build cross-functional teams to accomplish greater research objectives, which in the biomedical space is very important for research to move forward, to have those cross-functional perspectives involved in the research and the R&D. So those are some other great things to piggyback off what they said of important reasons to have your company in San Antonio.
I have a question for Randy now. Randy, some in the community were surprised to see the news last month that you'd be stepping down from your CEO position at the end of the year. Can you tell us, with your transition, what's next for TRTF? And the second part of that question is obviously, what's next for you?
This will be the first time Renee hears it.
Yeah.
So,
Congrats, Renee.
yeah, so when we embarked on this challenge 7 years ago, we really, it was a vision that half my board told me we would not be able to accomplish because they just found it a little bit crazy. But we've been able to take an area of town and really reprogram it from old warehouses and raw land into a very vibrant community now. That we did it on purpose as a catalytic investor. And so part of that was a 5-year plan to build out the block that we're on. We weren't sure where it was going at first. We just felt that this was the right place to do it because we could be a catalytic investor as well as take care of startup companies in the ecosystem that we're in. Flash forward 5 years, we built out that block. We are probably 82% occupied, with the rest of it will come on in the first quarter of next year. And so We bought 2 more blocks for future development. And this was a good time for me to kick back and look at it and say, the other thing we've done is we've had a sustainability program where we buy for-profit companies, and the money that's made under these companies goes to support our foundation. And we own 2 companies now, and we feel that we probably got to get 2 more under our belt before we're 100% sustainable. And so this is a period of transition for us to where we've invested our money. We need to step back and take a breath, sell the remaining land that's in the park, and invest that money in a couple more companies. And that's going to take 2 to 3 years to accomplish. And so it was a great time for me to transition. And Renee's been long ready to take over. He's been running the operation. He does a great job. And so this was just an appropriate time to transition. Second part of your question is, this is the 3rd time I've done this, where first time I sold my companies in 2014, my wife freaked out and said, "You're too young to retire." And I said, "I'm not retiring, I'm just gonna go do something else." And this time when I told her, she said, "Well, I could tell you were bored." And I said, "Why is that?" And she said, "Because you started meddling in my company." So she wasn't as worried about it. And so I'm gonna spend the next 2 to 3 months really looking at a couple opportunities that have been in front of me, and I'll put together something and go public at that time. But I'm not going to lose my love for San Antonio and my desire to be involved in our growth. It's just part of my nature. I was talking with Henry Cisneros at the breakfast this morning, and once you get that in your blood, you just can't stop it. So you'll see me.
Thank you. One of the things you each have touched on today is the fact that San Antonio's biosciences industry is built on its collaboration. Each of you has your own organizations that you all work together often, including at an event this morning, as well as with organizations like the Southwest Research Institute, BioBridge Global, University of Texas Health Science Center, San Antonio, and biotechnology companies like Symbiosis, and you mentioned others. So I wanted to understand a little bit more about how the business model of biosciences work. Some of those organizations we just heard about, the ones you talked about, are nonprofits, some of them are for-profits, and yet they're all operating in this newly created space. Is there enough opportunity in the biosciences in our city for each of these types of organizations to succeed? And maybe we'll start with Randy on this one, since you just were talking about a complicated business.
Yeah, well, I think we've been collaborating here before it was cool. So it's not something new to us. It's part of our structure, and so we do that well, and we get along together. You know, we all collectively have MOUs signed so that we can officially work with each other and go in, and it makes a big difference. And I forget, I think it was Heather that mentioned it, but man, when somebody comes to San Antonio and they have a list of things that they really need to answer these questions, we can typically get their answers to them or introduce them to people pretty quickly and move that equation along. You know, one of the top questions I always get when people come in is, "Where's the closest gym?" You know, and it's something simple, but it's important to them. We talked about working out a little while ago. When you have a routine and you're busy, having a gym close by is important, right? So but we pay attention to those details in San Antonio, and I think that makes it a better environment to deal with discuss.
Yeah, it's really important to understand that the biomedical research community in America is changing. There is more and more discussion about how we can move faster. The threats to human health continue to increase. If you're looking at neurodegenerative diseases, you're looking at cardiovascular diseases, we have a huge problem with diabetes and obesity. And I don't think I have to remind you that there's a problem with infectious diseases. If I was to tell you about all the infections we worry about in the next chapter, the amount of therapies and vaccines are limited relative to the challenges we face. And that's not just infectious diseases, other sectors as well. So there is a movement in this country to a different model. And that model is public-private partnerships. It's basically moving out of the traditional engine for biomedical research and discovery has been academia. And academia plays a critical role, don't get me wrong. But I think going forward, it's not going to be that. It's going to be more about finding out which entities do things really well and partnering with those organizations to get to the outcome faster, more efficient, so nimble, efficient, safe, but still get to the finish line, working with the FDA even to ensure that we're able to bring products forward. So I think that the advantage in our thinking about this is that going forward, these partnerships that Heather talked about become more robust, and that we exploit each other's talents more and more effectively to get to the finish line. Because it's not just about a discovery any longer. I think it's really, there's more and more interest from the public to know what it's doing for me. If nothing else happens today in this program, it's really to know with certainty that when you hear about research, it's not what it's being thought to be in today's world of politics, where anti-science is more than I've ever seen in my 35 years as a physician scientist, and this worries me. The more we can talk about the facts of how science helps you, and in fact, historically, vaccines, I have to tell you, have saved hundreds of millions of lives worldwide. That's a fact. So we're on social media a lot. We hear a lot of nonsense, frankly. So I think it's going to be what we do together as a community working in these public-private partnerships. But I really don't want to dismiss the opportunity to say these public awareness programs become essential going forward. We have to keep talking to the public about why it's important to them. So I wanted to make that point today.
Yeah, I mean, Larry mentioned the role of the academic institutions today, particularly in the basic research. If you move a step away from that and get to the nonprofit research centers like Texas Biomed, they typically move faster because they don't have that academia tie-in. They're not tied to semesters and classes and that kind of thing. So they can move faster, which is very important as the economy is changing, as Larry was mentioning. For-profits can also move fast. They have sometimes limitations based on their investors or their stockholders and meeting those performance goals that they have from a financial perspective that may limit them or may enable them to put a lot of money down on an issue and solve it faster. So there's room for all of the different kinds of organizations to play in this space, and they all have a role to play, which is, again, exciting about this particular sector because there's room for everyone.
You touched on this a second ago, Dr. Schlesinger, but for many industries, the COVID-19 pandemic changed everything. But for each of you, that's especially true. What are some of the lessons learned during the COVID-19 pandemic about how quickly research can happen and how quickly it can be implemented?
Yeah, so we had a breakthrough, and we were able to get an effective vaccine to the market from its inception in 11 months. And that actually worried people. But I have to tell you, the technology for our vaccines that were put on the market by Moderna and Pfizer began in the 1970s, and that was not really talked about. This is not new technology. It actually was primed, and it worked well for COVID-19. But I would argue 11 months is still too long. In 11 months, I think it's now 1.2 million U.S. lives were lost. Over 7 million, probably closer to 10 million lives worldwide were lost. And that's a lot of people. I think we truly need to think differently. In the infectious disease space, the problem has been that we don't complete the job in between pandemics. That is that what happens, and happened with COVID-19, is that it gets in the newspapers, we start hearing about a major catastrophe, and so money starts coming into the sector, and then we start doing things. That's called reacting. The word react is something I don't like, because react already has an activation energy that's too high, in my opinion. So what we need to do differently going forward is to build financially sustainable engines that are already working towards those solutions in the equivalent from the military side, peacetime, to be much more prepared to pivot as opposed to react, and that's the terminology I use. If we actually increase the arsenal to protect us against infections, and by the way, we know a lot about the major threat, the families of bugs that are the major threat going. We already know 7 families of viruses that can either be engineered or naturally mutate. So we can be working on that now. And so do we have the ability to create structures that will allow us to get those products through the FDA pipeline before the next pandemic? And so we're able to pivot much more quickly than 11 months. And I'm very proud to say that Biomed views itself as really an important player in the solution to that problem. We're working on things, as Randy just said, he'll go public. Well, I'll go public also with things we're working on now. But I really do believe San Antonio is going to play a critical national role in developing those solutions that will enable us to be healthier. So I think we need to be much more proactive. And I think it's, again, not just infectious disease. I mean, I think we need more tools to be able to help emerging threats of any disease type. So I think that's the change we'll see going forward.
Really quick, we'll follow up on that, and then I want to hear both of your lessons learned from the COVID-19 pandemic. But in August, Biomed announced a joint preclinical study that showed some success with a vaccine platform that uses viral DNA to achieve a similar result as mRNA vaccines like Pfizer and Moderna COVID-19 vaccines. Can you tell us more? I just was researching and saw that. Can you tell us more about where that stands and what it means?
All right, so the mRNA vaccines we know are highly effective and they're short-lived. We've been talking about vaccines every 4 months or 6 months. I can tell you that we already have a huge problem with vaccine hesitancy. But if the future is shots every 4 to 6 months, vaccine hesitancy will increase, not decrease. None of us really want shots this frequently. So other platforms of vaccines are being investigated that are more what we call durable, more long-lasting. And one of the strategies in partnership with a company in Europe has been to work on what's called a DNA vaccine. Without getting geeky today, DNA makes mRNA, but DNA in our bodies is more long-lasting in terms of durability, and it's a strategy, one strategy being employed for next-generation vaccines. If we go back to what we give our kids, the MMR and some other of those vaccines, remember we were talking about a shot, a booster, and then maybe 10 years later, right? That'll help vaccine hesitancy. So we're working on other platforms, whether they be protein or live attenuated vaccines, that we believe historically have told us they're more durable. And I think we need to get back to some of those platforms. That's what Biomed is working on. So that's only one example of different vaccine platforms.
There are 2 things I think we learned very well during COVID in addition to what Larry had mentioned. The first one is speed. There was a 71-site trial, early treatment trial for COVID-19 therapy, and it was conducted 71 sites across the world. The site in San Antonio enrolled the fastest by the 6-week mark and enrolled the most for the whole study. So what that says is San Antonio's culture is not of collaboration and helpfulness is not just this sector, it is the community at large, and people here want to be helpful and push things forward in a good way. So that in particular is important on the COVID route. I think we also learned that we can work together to accomplish things faster as well. That is key, as I was mentioning, with the cross-functional teams and making things happen. Also from a national level, I'll say, I think in San Antonio we already knew this, people learned that we need to have clinical trials that represent all of the populations that are going to receive whatever those therapies or vaccines or treatments are. I think we already knew this in San Antonio. San Antonio's population is an ideal population to conduct clinical trials. We have over 1,800 active trials going on right now in the city. And the reason for that is multifaceted. It is ethnicity, of course. It is also, and unfortunately for San Antonio, the comorbidities that are important, the diabetes, the obesity, the cardiovascular issues, but all of these different demographics of people from a medical state as well as a genetic state need to be included in trials, and San Antonio is a great place to do that, to make sure that the outcomes are going to be beneficial for everyone.
So from my standpoint, I think, other than what's already been said, AI is going to become increasingly a big part of evaluating some of these different opportunities, vaccines and others, in that already we're on the edges of being able to look at 100, maybe there's 150 different opportunities to look at on a specific area. But with AI, they're already being able to bring that down to 10 or 12 to really focus on. And when we can bring it down to a number like that and throw that same amount of money that we were going to throw at 150 of them, it gets back to the velocity of how quickly we can make something happen. So I'm excited. A little bit nervous, but mostly excited.
Well, along those lines on infectious diseases, one of the hard subjects each of you contends with is testing on animals for biomedical research. Can you envision a time when the need for such research testing, such as that done on primates, can be eliminated? If not, what in the meantime?
Okay, so we have another hour. Okay, facts. The National Academy of Sciences issued a very important report this past year, totally factually based on the impact that primates in particular have on improving human health. And it's striking how important they are. The misunderstanding is that when you are conducting animal science, that makes you old-fashioned because we have all these other ways to bypass animal research. As a physician scientist who's active, I can tell you that these alternative approaches are coming along, but they're not prime time, and they're certainly not going to make the FDA feel comfortable. That's our regulatory agency for those who aren't in. They're not going to make them feel comfortable that we're ready to do large human trials with some of these alternative approaches. So the first answer to the question is, we at Biomed are want to lead in the area of alternatives to animal science. We're not just stuck in our way of doing science, but on the other hand, the report ultimately stated even when something comes forward and is able to be validated to be an alternative, the FDA is still going to ask that animals be part of this pipeline because they are a living species that are related to humans, and complex animals are able to determine whether a new therapy is actually going to be effective in a human still, even with these alternatives. Here's what's key, though. What's key is that you spend every day on the health and well-being of those animals, and that is not talked enough about. We have 150 incredibly dedicated personnel that work every day to ensure those animals are safe, that they're not in pain, and that we take care of them if there's an injury or something like that. We actually have the equivalent of a human hospital. We have a Texas Biomed place to take care of these animals. So we're very committed, and what makes a National Primate Center different is we have the resources and infrastructure to do that properly. So we have our vice president, it's not public yet even, for communications who's in the audience today. We have an incredible comms team that is dedicated to ensuring that facts about the use of animals in research is done properly, and that we take a very proactive approach. I think the thing we don't want to do any longer is hide from it. And many institutions hide from the fact that these animals are precious and necessary. We don't. And as someone who's been in the business as long as I have, there are animal activist programs out there, and I'm very familiar with them. They have their own job to do, okay, God bless them, but I'm about facts and about curing human lives, and that's where the focus is, and we'll do anything we need to do to advance a diagnostic therapy or vaccine to the clinic. That is our goal. That's what our mission is at Biomed.
Well, as a person who's had family members as well as myself have enjoyed medical care, I'm really glad that medical care has gone as far as it has to help me and those that I care about and my friends and strangers too. As someone who's run clinical trials, However, I've had to sit with subjects, and this happens every trial, where people are considering signing up for a trial and they are given an informed consent. And through that process, they are told, hey, here are the potential side effects, here's the benefits, here's all the information so you can make an informed decision about whether you want to participate in this trial or not. I am very thankful that we have preclinical data going into clinical trials, so we're not just making it up of what the side effects might be, or we don't really know, but good luck. I mean, you can't run clinical trials with that kind of loose information. It's unethical to people, and people won't want to participate if there's not the information that it's going to be safe, or at least what the risks are for them to participate. And if we don't have people participating in clinical trials, we're not getting new medical technology out. So we need alternative methods would be great once they're validated. As Larry said, we're not there yet. So it is very critical that we have this animal data in order to get data with people, in order to have new technologies come out that we all benefit from having available when we go to the doctor.
Wonderful. We're very nearly out of time, but one thing I really did want to ask you all about, because I think you're sitting in the chairs, when it's biomedical research or biotechnology, you each are working within a mostly digitized and highly sensitive space. Can you speak to any concerns you have about cyber attacks, or how you've implemented cybersecurity protocols around your work? I know that also is a growing area in San Antonio.
Yeah, I'll start with that one. BioMedical organized and participated in a panel on this issue at a major cyber conference. And there's a lot of multifaceted issues. You know, organizations themselves come under attack, and just like any other business. But when you get into the medical care, it's a bit more complicated. To take one aspect that is maybe overlooked in the general conversation is medical devices. So there are medical devices that are 20 years old, 10 years old at hospitals and clinics, and they're maybe using an old Windows operating system, and that doesn't have the same cyber protections as current Windows software would, for example, or other operating systems. And so the problem comes in, what do you do with that medical technology? Is the burden on the medical manufacturer that set up their budgets and pricing, anticipating that their device would last a certain amount of time, and now someone's using it longer? Is the burden on the hospital? And then you get to the point of, okay, if you want to just take passwords, for example. Do you want the surgeon to have to enter a password in the middle of your operation in order to make sure that device and that network is protected? What if they don't remember it? Do you really want them to put a Post-it on top of the machine? Because that defeats the whole purpose. So there's a lot of area that needs to be figured out in this space, particularly when it comes to medical devices, of how the technology can still be usable, but also be protected. And there's just a lot of work that needs to be done in order to address this issue.
Okay, now that you know what Texas Biomed does, do you think there are people who want to know what we do? So I don't want to quote to you how many times we're looked at by China and Russia in particular. So I want you to know that there's cybersecurity and physical security, both, and we're merging to what's called a zero tolerance policy, that is nobody gets in at all, and so we have 3 shelves now that we've built around biomed. So you literally can't get in, and we have some new technology now that's getting better and better at spam to intercept those as well. So it's huge, and you can't run institutes like Texas Biomed without having top-level cyber and physical security in terms of even employees that we bring into the institute. This is only going to get bigger, and I think the fact that San Antonio has a focus and expertise in this area, UTSA is well known for the efforts that they put into this. I believe a new campus up downtown, in fact, becomes more and more important for us. It's just getting more and more sophisticated. More people want to know about our technology. That's just reality. So it's a great question, and one that we need to be prepared for. Yes.
Yeah, I think even for us, where we don't do a lot of research, but we have a campus where others can come in and do what they're doing. We've every 6 months, I think, since Renee's been on board, we've gone in and upgraded what we're doing. But it's a zero-sum game at the end of the day. It's like the old radar detectors where you got your radar detector and then the police change the bandwidth and then you got another one and that's back and forth. But there's so many sophisticated ways to get into this space right here. And I look at the lighting, and I was just briefed on a deal where in one of our major military installations on the West Coast, they were having some problems with their lighting, and they went and pulled one of them out, and as they were evaluating it, the Chinese government had embedded a product within that light that was able to steal data. So it's coming from every angle, and the only thing we can do is keep fighting from every angle. We're offensive and defensive, so it's here. It's going to be here for probably the rest of our lives.
Thank you. We could keep talking all morning, but I need to invite back up our publisher, Angie Mott, to close us out. Thank you all for being here, and give it up for their participation.
Thank you so much. What an interesting panel. Thank you all for making time for us out of your really busy day. Thank you, Lee, for leading such a thoughtful discussion. And thank you to the San Antonio Report team and on the business side that puts all this stuff together and makes it possible. Two things in closing. Y'all talked a lot about what a great place San Antonio is to live. And I couldn't agree with you more. That's why I moved here 20 years ago with my family. So at the report, we've launched something along those lines. It's a new newsletter called Live Like a Local, and you can sign up for it on our website, Live Like a Local. Please do, and it's all about what they were talking about today, about how the culture is unique, and we hope you'll sign up for that newsletter. One last thing, if you're not a member, or if you'd like to make an additional gift, if you are a member, now through the end of the year, all new and incremental donations will be matched 100% thanks to the John and Florence Newman Foundation. So now's the time to take that lead. Thank you all so much. We appreciate our readers and our supporters very, very much. Thank you.